Huntsville, Alabama. You know we've got space camp and rockets and government contractors, but did you know we have one kick-ass music scene that doesn't get near enough attention? Well, that's about to change. Welcome to Uprising, a podcast about the people that make Huntsville's music scene so cool. Hosted by me, Bill Fowler, Huntsville native and lifelong musician. So strap on that guitar, flip on that amp, and crank it all the way up. You've just joined the Uprising.
All right, so I'm listening to this. This is called Bob's Jam, which is Bobby Taylor, who's playing drums. And this is so tight and great. And then this is another one of my favorites. I'm gonna skip to this other song.
I'll tell you.
And this is like John Onder playing bass.
And Scott Holder on the drums, right there.
And then you. And who's playing keys?
On this one, it is Bob Van Valkenburg.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, old school.
Right. So this is Hunter Copeland, and I've known Hunter for a really long time, one of my very best friends. And this is his new album called The Boom Boom Room, and this is the title track from The Boom Boom Room. And this is, I'm gonna turn that down. That's just so good. But all instrumental.
It is.
And it's coming out, it's out, right?
It is. We got it on Spotify and iTunes and all the other places where you can get music. We just don't have hard copies yet, which I'm not sure how many people even are interested in that these days, but probably in about 2 weeks we'll actually have a physical copy. Week or two, yeah.
So CDs?
Actual CDs, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember those?
Yeah, I remember that you and I used to have trunks full of them as we traveled to our gigs, which now they're coasters.
That's right.
One day they'll be collector's items.
Yeah.
One day. Again, this is Hunter, long time grown up in Huntsville musician, and just created your first solo album.
Right.
And all instrumental stuff. And I would say, I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, so I'm a big fan of like old school, like Herbie Hancock, Lee Ritenour, grew up with listening to him. And so I hear anything that you hear that's kind of guitar forward instrumental stuff. That's where my brain goes. Like Grey Boy All Stars and then like Galactic.
Grey Boys, New Master Sounds, I love them. And then going way back like the jazz guys, some of those guys were influenced by Grant Green. And he's a dude that's just funky. And so I thought of him a lot making this music too. So he's one to check out.
But you're a guitar player.
Try to, yes.
Well, you're a brilliant guitar player. So Hunter played, we'll work on your resume later, but like Hunter and I played in a band called There From Here together back at the beginning of my college career. So this would be the mid-90s.
That's right.
Early to mid-90s.
That was an experience.
And so that was an experience. We'll get into that a little bit later. But so you're a really accomplished and very gifted guitar player, but have been playing bass in Juice, which a lot of people know that band around town. You guys play all the time. And you've been playing bass with Juice for how long?
Well, when you were in that fold at some point too. So, I started playing with Bobby when I was a senior in high school. So that was '89.
Yeah.
And
Bobby Taylor, the drummer.
Bobby Taylor. So, so we've been doing this for years. Bass I've been playing, so maybe 5 years ago our bass player split, and so I became the bass player.
Right.
So that's probably been 5 years I've been doing that.
Right.
When I started playing music, you remember back in the high school days, there was always these dudes, like in my grade it was Kendall Rich.
Yeah.
He could do the Eruption.
Yeah.
He could play all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I loved music, but I was never like that guy.
Yeah.
So for me, from the very beginning, it was about writing songs.
Yeah.
And
to separate yourself, as that was your gift, maybe not earlier, maybe not technical, but you were more of a creative.
That's how that's sort of the angle of music that I loved, is like making a piece of music. And so I've played with Juice all this time where we I mean, we did put out some music at one point, but it's a cover band, and it's fun, great players, but somewhere along the way, I sort of forgot what I really went into music for, which was making music. Well, and so that's kind of how this came about.
We have a relatable tale, I mean, mainly because we've been in a couple of bands together.
Yeah.
And the bands that we have been in, I think were pretty non-traditional in not only the set list that we played. I mean, the Current Juice situation, maybe not so much, but earlier on, we were playing things that were kind of B-sides of more popular bands. And so,
yes.
And a lot of it was very groove-based. A lot of it was very riff-based stuff. So, with that, you have, with this album, a very groove-based riff. What I love about this is that it's very drivable. Like, you're in the car.
Oh, I like that.
It's very drivable.
Good.
That's really cool, and it's music that you can have on. It's ambient music. You can, as a musician. So I talked to Dave Anderson about, and I'll talk to Rob Aldridge about, is it's music that a musician listens to and appreciates. It's also someone who just likes a good beat and can listen to and appreciate.
Yeah. I like that.
The Boom Boom Room by Hunter Copeland and friends, and I want to talk about how this came to be. But real quick, for people who are just getting to know you, how do they get their hands on this right now?
That's a good question. So right now you can go listen to it on Spotify or iTunes, anywhere, Pandora. It's at all those kind of deals.
Right.
I'm old, so I don't know all of them, but it's in those places. We will have physical copies in the next week or two, and then hopefully in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're going to have a CD release party.
Right, looking forward to that. That'll be great.
Yeah, so we're going to have the actual CDs, the physical copies at that. Mm-hmm. And then I'm assuming I know the Fret Shop will have some there and around town. And
so you're working right now to get a location for that release party, kind of get it on the calendar that doesn't conflict with everybody.
Right.
You and Alan a little from Listen Local, you guys are kind of working to make that happen.
Yep, it's a work, but we should be there soon.
Yeah. Oh, well, very good. So the people that are playing, let's back up a little bit. So you're sitting in your home studio and you come up with these songs really that are riffs and chord progressions and so on, and how over what amount of time are we talking that you've been working on the compilation here? So
that's a great question. So the core band was, I played guitar, John Onder played bass, who is beyond awesome. Scott Holder played drums, who is beyond awesome. So most of it was the three of us, and then we mixed in some organ guys. Mm-hmm. Shelley played sax for me, Shelley Williams. So we mixed in those others, but the bass was the three of us. And so about half the songs, I came in to Scott and John, and it was probably over the last year and a half, and said, hey, I have this idea, and we kind of made them into songs. Mm-hmm. The other half of the songs were more of, I went to Jim Cavender and said, hey, I have this idea, and he sort of made it into a song. He was sort of the producer that...
Right. So Jim, who his name has been invoked multiple times on this podcast already, we're only 6 episodes in. Uh-huh. Jim, a lifelong Huntsville musician, incredibly gifted singer, songwriter in his own right, has a studio over here in 5 Points. So did you know you were going to work with Jim immediately? How did that happen?
I was hoping he would work with me because I'd heard what he did with John Onder's music, and so I was hoping he would, and somehow I talked him into it.
Yeah.
And he does. He and Terry Cavender have this studio in 5 Points. They're moving over off of Governor's Drive. They've got a real nice location they're working on over there. But I knew that I needed more than just my input and Scott and John's. I needed somebody else to kind of be a guiding force. And with Jim, you get, technically he's a good player, so every time you go in there to record something, it's like getting a guitar lesson.
Right.
But also his vocabulary, he'll say, hey Hunter, I want you to hear, I think we ought to model this song after, and then he'll pull some Marvin Gaye song from the 60s.
Right.
And I think still yet, I've never mentioned a song that he didn't know. He's such an encyclopedia, so you kind of get both angles of it.
Is that what a producer does? I mean, is that when you produce an album, is that the role of a producer, to take something that's raw material that you have this idea and you walk in and you really kind of just put it on the ground in front of your producer, and the two of you, or maybe more than that in some cases, bang out what it eventually becomes. Is that?
I think that's a huge piece of it, at least in this situation it was. Another artist that is recording for Jim's record label is Bobby Blunt, and he played organ on some of my tracks, and we were talking about this. One other thing that Jim kind of did, I think he did this for Bobby, I know he did it for me, is I came in with all these half ideas, and I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but you're like, oh my God, is this is gonna sound nuts, you know, what the hell is he gonna think about this?
Yeah.
He was like that voice that, you know, I never brought in an idea where he said no.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, let's steer it this way, or let's do this with it, but he kind of provided some confidence, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah,
well,
so I needed that.
So not only Jim, but you have these players who are all incredible. These are the A-list of Huntsville musicians that you gotta go to, that you happen to know and have relationships with, and you give them this raw material, and then I know you, and you have you have no ego, which is wonderful. But you walk in with this idea and you hand it to someone like Jim, or especially John Onder, and you say, the purpose of that is to let him take it where he wants to go.
Yeah.
And then suddenly that your song, which is a song in maybe in concept, becomes something really concrete because of his contribution. Like, describe, can you think of a song that you have that did that?
So a couple examples. There's one on there, I'm trying to think. So there's one called Adam and the Bull that I wrote. I brought it in, gave it to John Onder and Scott. They came up with their parts. And John's part, actually in half the song, was so involved, you know, that it sort of became a part of the melody. So he actually wrote part of that song, and then Jim's kind of the one that points that out, you know, hey, this is actually part of the song now, let's work with that.
Right.
There's that kind of thing. There's songs, for instance, like the one you played on.
Yeah.
I kind of have this guitar harmony part worked out, and when I come in, I'm telling Jim, hey, I love this song, but it sounds a little too happy, and it sounds too Allman Brothers-ish.
Yeah.
And he says, well, why don't you just change that one note, you know, move it a half step off from what it is.
Right. Oh, man, I noticed that. Yeah.
So just that one change, it's like, oh, now it gives it a little, and that was kind of one of our goals, is we didn't want to just copy something from the past and kind of be a throwback.
Right.
I mean, there is some of that, but we kind of wanted to, every song we try to put a little twist in there.
I think this song is Midlife Chrysler.
Yeah.
And if you
one of my favorite bands.
I know.
I haven't seen them in a while, but they are awesome.
They're on a little hiatus. Right, they're exploring other projects. But so you'll listen to this song called Midlife Chrysler on Hunter's album, Boom Boom Boom, which you can find on Spotify right now today. Go listen. And when you're playing this melody, and those of you who are musicians can appreciate this, the melody that kind of provides the background or the backbone of the song it's a major. And as you're playing through this kind of major chord progression, you hit one note at the end on the 4, I think, and then it just becomes something else. And it's, if you're a musician, you really appreciate that, because it's that one little thing that provides an unpredictability to a song.
Yeah.
And if you're a listener, you're like, something about that isn't normal. And it's a really good, not normal, you know?
That's an example of something I would have never thought of.
Yeah.
That Jim threw in there, and it changed the whole song. And then on the flip side, when they get to mixing it and the mastering part, his wife Terry gives it a listen in different rooms, and then she'll have input.
Right.
You know, hey, if we want this to sound a certain way, we need to EQ it this way and that. So as a team, it just like kind of all came together.
So the entire process took how long? From not the writing, but you're in the studio and you're...
Maybe a year. I mean, it wasn't a year solid, but you know how it is with kids and life.
They ruin everything.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of up and down, and we do a little bit, and then we'd be off for a little while. But it was awesome. I mean, I really loved, it was Scott and John and I, but getting everybody else like you and Alan to play Midlife Chrysler.
Yeah.
And everybody came in. We had 3 different working guys. They all had different sounds, They all brought their personality, and it was all people that I love. I really loved that part of it. The song that you mentioned at the first, Bob's Jam, in Juice, we do a lot of weddings.
Yeah.
So we'll do an hour of instrumental songs, and that's not our forte. So we're always trying to stretch it, and Bobby's always like, "Hey, play that song that goes doom doom doom." So that's how that one was called, Bob's Jam.
Yeah.
And you would appreciate this going along with Bobby's personality. So he shows up at the studio, forgets his drums aren't at home, and shows up with this kick drum with like spider webs and like one cymbal, hi-hat, snare. That was it. And when you hear it compared to the other songs, it probably the drums sound different because it's Bobby's set from probably using his son's little Christmas snare drum. I can't remember. He's done that a few times. And so, he shows up, plays it one time through with the drum solo, and leaves. That's his one contribution.
But you would never, number one, you would never know, and he's the kind of guy that's so talented that he could probably play it on a suitcase. And
right.
And it would be, and somehow it would be perfect.
It's really neat seeing everybody's personality. Scott Holder, on the other hand, is a totally very technical musical drummer, plays guitar, sings, plays bass, and takes it from a totally another angle, which is awesome as well. So I loved seeing everybody's different.
So is there these songs are, as you'll get, these songs are would be great live because they're jams. A lot of them you can tell that there's space in there that you can kind of go off on a direction, and it would be really cool. And that's because I've known Hunter for a long time. That's in the bands that we played in together. Having that improvisational time is really fun. And so is there a live performance coming up? Would this be something that you could put together and maybe bring some people out to play?
Yeah, so we play, so Scott and John and I play around town a little bit.
As
the Note Kickers.
Right.
So we played at Straight to Ale, Sidetracks. We played with some really cool artists there. And it's just like you say, the song is kind of a starting point, and then when we get there, it goes wherever. And so for the CD release, in a few weeks, hopefully, like I say, a month to 6 weeks, it'll happen, and that's exactly kind of how we'll approach it. We'll have the songs, but we'll just, that'll be a starting point.
Well, I want to go in a completely different direction and start talking about growing up in Huntsville and playing music in Huntsville.
Okay.
Because one of kind of the foundational messages, at least that I have, as I go through all this, is talking to people who are currently working musicians in town and doing really cool things, but also how they got to where they are. And I know your story for the most part, but I want you to tell me, how did you begin? Well, when did you know that music was going to be your thing?
When I first started playing, I just loved it right off. And you might have been in the 80s. I think we all kind of had the 80s era, Van Halen, that thing. And so, I heard, one of the first things I heard was Jimi Hendrix, that really fired me up to play guitar. And, I remember playing my first gig. I think it was at Huntsville High, like after a football game or something.
Yeah.
And just the crowd having fun, and we actually even played some of our own songs at that point. And I think from that moment I was like, this is good. Yeah. I'll keep doing this. So.
Well, it's a very similar thing. I think when you blossom, hand-eye coordination kind of hits you in high school. You have a desperate need to be cool. And for people like me and you who are not going to be the quarterback or the point guard or really anything that doesn't have a PlayStation controller attached to it, I think you and I have a very similar story there. So the people that you kind of came up with, that you're playing music with, who were some of those folks that? Yeah,
so you would know a lot of them. When I started out, one of my best buds, Toby Burney, back in the day, he does film work in Lithuania and here in our country, works for CNN some. And anyways, he was a guy. Wes Wilkes, which we lost, but he's a great player. And then I met Bobby early on. I was a senior in high school when I started playing with him.
Right.
And then from there, at some point, I started playing with, I met Bobby and, Danny Whitsitt and Brian McCool through Bobby.
Yeah.
They were older than me.
A lot older.
Yeah, right? So I ended up kind of hooking on with them and playing through college with those guys. And so that was a big piece of it for me.
Yeah, so during this time, what you just mentioned is, so the band, was it There From Here?
There From Here, right.
Those of you who are as old as Hunter and I and remember the Tip Top, I would have been 15 or 16, trying to get my way past the doorman at Tip Top to go see There From Here play
Lanny?
At Tip Top, and so Hunter's band was like the brass ring that a lot of guys that were my age, that were just a few years behind you, were really trying to chase. Like, that was who we wanted to be. And you guys began to tour. You had a booking agent. I mean, that was like, to us, that was making it, or just right underneath making it. You guys were opening for, bands that were on the radio at the time. And so that was an incredible thing. So that's my looking up to what you guys were doing. Who were you looking up to at that time? Like, who were some of the bands that were from here that you felt like you wanted to emulate?
Yeah, so we kind of had the same thing, and whenever I talk about Huntsville music, I think of Tip Top, because it was just that place for me when I walked into it as a kid, because you could go in there and, it was one of those places where they would just ask you, "Are you 21?" So,
right.
Yes. So, but I just remember going in there, you never knew who was going to be playing, but they were always good.
Yeah.
It could be country, it could be death metal,
right.
It could be Follow for Now, it could be Widespread Panic or whoever, but the music was consistently good. Anyway, so I think of the Tip Top, and back then, so we looked up to a lot of bands that would come through town. We played with Month of Sundays a lot, but I'd say the ones we really looked up to was kind of like the Follow for Nows. We got to play back then with Aquarium Rescue Unit a lot. So back then that was Jimmy Herring, Colonel Bruce, O'Teal, and that was, just seeing them from 2 feet away a few times, when we got to play with them, that was one of the ones we looked up to.
Yeah. Well, those are kind of magical times in the Huntsville music scene. As you're talking about Tip Top, and of course we can't go 10 minutes talking about local music and where it could be without talking about what the Tip Top was. And
That's
I think
so
what
cool.
Tip Top had that we're not going to get through just opening a place is you would go to Tip Top regardless of who was playing. Like, it was the venue was the thing.
Yeah.
As much as you would show up and there would, because you wanted to be there, that was the thing to do on the weekend. And whoever, like you said, whoever was up on the stage was going to be good. But I guess the point of that is it wasn't so much who you were going to see.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It was the place.
You knew it would be good.
I mean, the location, it was no bigger than a broom closet, It was a lot like seeing a band in a public restroom, But it was the certain vibe that place gave you. It was the definition of a dive bar. And even the bands that played there saw the value of that. Like a tiny stage and just so much fun.
We'd walk in there and see those bands, and I can't remember all the names, but like Trip to Argentina and
Man or Astro Man. Like,
oh my God,
so
yeah.
good.
And I remember seeing Jim Cavender in bands.
Yeah.
Anthony Sharp, Andrew, those guys. Mark from the Fret Shop.
Right.
And so those were the guys we kind of looked up to. And
Mike Kilpatrick.
Oh my God, yeah. That's a blast.
So that was as your career's kind of, your musical career's kind of taken off in a local sense. Right. But getting started in that, you grew up in South Huntsville, going to Huntsville High. The formulation of that, do you feel like that Huntsville still has, it's hard to kind of encapsulate, but like a garage band scene, do you feel like that there's a movement of music coming from just starting a band to getting to play at sidetracks? Do you see that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer, but I don't know if the reason I don't see it as much is just because maybe I'm too old.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the young kids. Because I wonder that all the time. Is there a Tip Top or... I know Sidetracks is sure kind of getting a good reputation for a similar sort of, hey, the music's good no matter who it is.
Right.
I just don't know, and I wonder about that. I wonder if kids, I mean, I hope they still want to play live and not just for, you know, YouTube and that kind of thing.
There's a lot of competition, and there was a lot of competition for that when you and I were growing up. Video games are no less prevalent now than they were then.
Right.
But now we have Netflix and all kinds of other stuff that's kind of keeping people preoccupied. But
it's a tough question, man. I wonder that all the time. If they have, you know, is there a place where I see a lot of, I mean, I talk to musicians that are closer to my age, and they have projects that, you know, original music that they work on, and you know, they're playing at the Copper Top, or they're playing places. So I mean, I know it's still going on.
Right.
I don't know what extent.
I think we have a lot more. I mean, with technology, and I guess with social media, and just a broader community of people communicating with each other, you know, what we have with the internet, is that when you and I were coming up and we had a CD, our ability to make people buy that was very limited. You know, there were very few, I mean, aside from keeping them in the backseat of your car as you drive around town, but, hey, you guys,
right.
You know, and that's I guess that's still a valuable approach, but now we have the ability to, you know, get on social media and say, well, just like this, is just say, hey, I've done something, and if you are interested, here's how you go get it. I just don't know that we still have, like, if I want to start a band and I'm 19, I'm a student at UAH or whatever, I want to get some guys and girls together to do something cool, is there that venue that would take me in, regardless of, you know, do I have a press, no, who cares if you have a CD or not, come play on a Friday night. I don't have a sense of that. I think the same reason you do is I'm just unplugged from that age.
Maybe so. I mean, I think of back when I played with Alan Little and Scrimpture and Hank back in Plaid. I mean, we'd go play at the CD store. You know, we'd record a CD, put it out, and they'd let us play on the floor in the middle of the day.
Right.
And then, you know, I remember we just rented out the train depot and put on a show, and we did it ourselves, but people would show up. You know, I mean, so it makes me wonder if that's still a viable.
I think the old guy, the world isn't the way it used to be kind of thing. There's a certain truth to that, but it's also because we're just disconnected from it. Like, we're not in it every single day. Since starting to do this, I've met a lot of people who are in it every day and who have given me some perspective that the music scene that I think is anemic or lacking some key thing is not at all. I just don't see it. It's
That's
just
awesome.
not. I'm not the target market, and so, you know.
But that makes me feel better. That's cool.
Yeah, it's just, and again, the undercurrent is that we have a whole lot of really talented people doing some really interesting things. It's just maybe we don't quite have the layer of venues that allow us to go and experience that. That's why Listen Local, I think, is such a valuable community project, and what Tangled Strings does. And
well, and what you're doing, I was just thinking, I mean, we didn't have that, you know, years ago. I mean, we couldn't get a word out doing this, or, I mean, so there's some really awesome new things too.
So what are you doing right now? Like, your monthly working musician schedule looks what? Like, how does that look?
Well, so right now it's, we sort of hit some pretty busy with weddings and stuff, so I do that, the cover band thing, and I play at my church, which is pretty busy as well. And then Scott and John and I try to play a little bit every month, and right now it's doing the cover band thing pretty hardcore for another few weeks before it gets hot and the weddings taper off. Right. And getting ready for this CD release.
Yeah, so
seeing where that goes.
For those of you uninformed about, like, the tension between the cover band versus the original band thing, people are going to show up to hear what they like. You know, you got to develop a following with your stuff before you can get anybody to show up for any length of time when you say, hey, I wrote this.
Yeah.
You know, which was always a challenge. Like, Hunter and I were in a band, like this band There From Here, when I was in college, and shortly thereafter, where we had a CD that we were promoting, and we would play, obviously most of our set was that, which approximately no one was interested in. And then over time, you end up playing in front of more and more people because your music is in the style of a certain thing that's happening, and your set ends up being 50% covers just because you need to make money.
Right. And you got to be able to play a certain amount of time if you're not opening, But it did seem like if you kept that track going, it would work, right? And I remember like Hank Gravel was kind of a master of that. So we'd go play in Montgomery, or we had a few dive places. We played in Mississippi, and you know, there'd be 5 people there, right?
Yeah.
And but Hank was sort of that charismatic dude, and so the next time there'd be 20 people, and the next time there'd be, you know, and so you really could kind of see that build. But man, you're exactly right. That's a tough process.
Well, and I think for the soul of a musician, you need to do the thing that is going to pay you, because I mean, being an artist means needing to support yourself. I mean, that's no matter what your medium happens to be, and so you go do the thing that keeps you, I guess, you know, solvent.
I think you're right. I think it can just, like for me, it sort of got out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
For me, music can't be only about making money. It just didn't work.
No more than a job can be only about making money, right?
You're right. So for me, it just, you know, if I hadn't done this, it saved me in a lot of ways. So it just, and it doesn't mean I don't love playing with the guys I play with on the regular too.
Sure.
It's just a different thing. I got to create stuff.
No, I understand. I'm in, you know, in a kind of part-time playing in a with Dirt Circus, the 90s cover band, which is a blast. You go someplace, and when, you know, we're playing at the River here in a couple of weeks, and we'll play in front of people who've never seen us play before, but we play a specific 90s grunge, you know, the Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam kind of thing, which is great fun. They're hearing us play these songs for the first time, songs that they grew up with mostly. I'm playing this set for the 170th time.
You're right.
It would be like Journey. You know, you go to a Journey concert and they start playing Don't Stop Believing. Well, for you, it's great. For them, they want to just jump
Neil
off
Sean's
the stage.
like, oh my God.
Yeah, right. But it pays, and that's what being a performer is about, to the level that we can be performers, which is, you know, giving people something that they came to see. But you also need to have that project that gets you away from that for a while. And so you've done that. I mean, this is really good.
Yeah,
like from
I
beginning
plan to
to
keep
end,
doing it.
Really good stuff. So so that was my next question, is that you finished it. And I know from experience, having recorded several times with you quite a bit too, is that once you complete something and it's all wrapped up and nice, and you hear all of the flaws, you hear the things that you want to do differently next time. Mm-hmm. So are you already thinking about what's next?
Well, I am, because now I'm kind of got more in the mode of writing, and so I'm constantly writing songs. And you know, I don't know if the next thing will be more of something with lyrics and vocals or not, but yeah, I'm already moving towards that. Scott and John and I have ideas that we've already started working on, and that may be the next thing as well, which it'll likely be instrumental. But those songs are a little more further out than what's on mine, so it's kind of a different thing, which again is really cool.
Yeah. What are the boundaries that you can stretch with what you've done? Like when you say that further out, what does that mean?
So I would say the stuff. So I was telling you about Scott Holder. He's a very musical drummer, great drummer, but also he's thinking in terms of the whole song a lot of times, which is really cool.
That's dangerous for drummers at times.
I agree. I can tell you some Alan Little stories related to that, but anyway, so Scott will come in with a song, and when a drummer writes a song, like whenever Scott comes in and says, "Hey, I wrote a song," I get this like pit in my stomach. I'm like, "Oh my God," because it's never 4/4.
Right.
You know, so when I say stretching, maybe it's just stretching for me and not the other two guys, but just stuff that's a little more adventurous as far as that goes. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So if Scott comes in with an idea for a song, you know it's going to be a challenge for him, because he's looking to he wants a song that's going to be fun, like Bob's Jam. I mean, it's a fun song for him to play because it's challenging. Mm-hmm. And so for Bobby, who's the drummer in Juice, who plays, I mean, you guys play a 99%, cover set.
Right.
Very predictable. You know exactly what you're going to, I mean, every single song has been carved out for you.
Right.
And then you get a chance to do your own thing, and you're going to kind of go crazy. And so when you say stretch the boundaries, in Scott's example, he's going to play something that's going to be super drum interesting.
Well, and he has a cool way of taking a song that isn't in 4/4 and kind of making it sound like it is.
Yeah.
But to the guy playing it, again, that's me. Maybe to John Onder, and it's not as tough, but it's different. And trying to play a melody on top of that is
right.
But it's cool getting those ideas, and then we all get to kind of pile on. So.
Well, I really I really like it, and I don't just like it because you did it. I mean, I certainly would be honest with you if I would be like, man, Hunter, this is neat. But I love that kind of music. I'm kind of drawn toward
I love that,
instrumental
man. Thank
stuff
you.
anyway. It's really good, and I would like the next time, because I didn't have really. Hunter called me to play a little bit on this song, Midlife Chrysler.
Yeah.
Which
you did an awesome job.
Well,
by the
you're
way.
very nice.
I didn't give you much of a warning.
No, well, that's true, and
It's like,
I didn't
show
know
up.
what you were up to, and so then when I heard it, I didn't have a whole lot of time to like really digest the thing, and so if I had my own way, I would, the next time you do this, I would love to be involved again. And have
most definitely.
Have some time to. But I think it worked out. I love that song, and I love the whole thing.
I love what you did on it.
So I envision a world where here pretty soon that Huntsville is going to have a handful of really solid venues where you're going to be able to go see some really good regional acts, a sprinkling of national acts, and then a steady supply of local talent. And clearly we have such a wide array of people who are doing really interesting things. This is just like one beautiful example. So let's see. I got one last question for you before we wrap up. I'm asking everybody this question.
Oh, okay.
By the way. You have your instrument of choice. Since you're a rounded musician, you have a bass or a guitar, you choose, but you're on stage with somebody playing some specific song. So tell me what instrument you're playing, what living artist you're playing with, what the song you're playing, and what's the venue. This is your fantasy arrangement.
Ooh. And I only get one?
You only get one. And you have 9 seconds to decide.
Okay. So I'd love to be good enough to get on stage with a John Scofield or one of the jazz dudes, but I think if I got to pick something really quick, I also like the angle of being the side dude and trying to figure out how to put little flourishes in somebody else's song.
Yeah.
So I'd pick a songwriter. So I'd go with Jason Isbell or maybe Sturgill Simpson, and I want to be the side guy.
Yeah.
Like Isbell, like Elephant. If you've ever heard that song,
great.
Makes
song.
me cry.
Yeah.
I'd put a little slide guitar on that.
Oh yeah.
So I'm hoping maybe in my older age he'll need somebody different at some point.
That's really good. What's the venue?
Oh,
where would you play?
Where would we play?
Yeah.
We would play at the Ryman.
Unbeatable. So you'd be playing with Jason Isbell,
At
the song
the Ryman.
Elephant, playing some slide guitar at the Ryman.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great answer. It's almost exactly what I would say. I saw Jason Isbell at the Ryman, and Sadler Vaden, who has become one of my all-time favorite guitar players ever.
If we could move him out, and I'm in there.
Maybe he's not feeling too good. Maybe allergies are catching up with him.
Sick. I could be the standby.
But you and I are so similar as guitar players like that. I don't want to be the lead dude. I want to be playing the accent.
Yeah.
Just have the killer tone and just
Right, and that guy does.
Oh God, yeah. I've been tweeting back and forth. I will tweet compliments to him every now and then. He'll like a tweet of mine.
To
Sadler
Jason.
Vaden.
Okay.
And Jason Isbell too. Jason Isbell's two of my tweets, which to me is
sweet.
brushes with fame.
Yeah.
And I know there are people that are watching this that know him that would be he's the most approachable guy in the world. But for me, it's that's
Y'all are
rarefied.
basically like homies now.
We
right?
are soon. Soon. Hey, thanks so much, man.
Thank
I
you,
really
man.
appreciate it. Thanks for coming to this
Enjoyed
random
it.
place.
Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, isn't it nice?
Anytime you want to sit around,
Man, so,
drink a beer, talk about music, I'm in.
okay, that's great. The next time we get together, which should be here pretty soon, because we're going to talk about the CD release party.
Sure.
We don't have a venue quite yet. We don't have a date quite yet, but we're talking in the next couple of weeks. We're going to do this.
Soon.
All right, so
Month.
I'm going to help.
Month.
I'm going to make sure that people show up
Awesome.
somehow.
And thank you for doing this.
Oh,
And
yeah.
thank you for playing on this CD.
Oh, man, it was so much fun.
Because,
So much fun.
you tell somebody, hey, I got some instrumental songs, would you play on it? And it's, they don't know it. Thank you.
Oh,
Anyways,
oh, of course. I wish that my part was just
next
more.
time.
Yeah, next time.
Next time.
All right. Hey, man, thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Hunter Copeland, everybody. The album is called The Boom Boom Room. It's available right now on Spotify and all kinds of other places. for you to download and stream, and Hunter gets like 0.00 cent per stream.
Can I throw in one last thing?
Do it.
So if you buy the CD, we're going to take the money. I have a younger daughter who was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It's been a few years now, and I'm a poor dad, so I don't remember exactly what year. But anyway, she was diagnosed a few years ago, so we're going to take the money that we make off the CD sales and put towards JDRF, which is the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. I think I got that right.
Yeah.
And it's a great organization. They're actually doing work that will help people with diabetes that are alive now. It's not like something coming later. So I almost forgot that I want to throw that in.
Well, man, thank you. That's great. So if you didn't love Hunter already for what he is, that's pretty much the icing on the cake. I really appreciate it.